Hello and welcome. I'm Stephanie Hessler. I'm a high performance coach, and I'm the host of Success Mindset Live. And today is a conversation with an MBA admissions coach. If you have questions like who should get an MBA or who should get an EMBA, who should not, and what makes for a successful applicant, then keep watching because my guest is uniquely qualified to talk about this. She's an MBA herself from Wharton, one of the top business schools in the world. She's worked in a variety of businesses, and she started her MBA consulting business in 2017. Masaki Sasaki, I'm wonderfully grateful to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Stephanie. Very
And
excited to be here.
I'd like to start with asking you, tell us a little bit about your background. For those who don't know you, what's a little bit
Yes.
about your background?
Yeah. So, going way back 2 decades ago, I started out in finance. Well, I had several career iterations, but I started out in finance. I was in investment banking, private equity, equity research in Tokyo, London, New York, and I got my MBA in between.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons I went to business school is to really explore other opportunities because I knew early on that finance was probably not something that I would like to be in for the rest of my life. I wanted to explore other opportunities, and I thought business school would be a great way to do it. And one area that I explored was marketing, specifically with consumer products, fashion and luxury. And one of the reasons why I wanted marketing at the time was because, going back, way down memory lane, like when I was a schoolgirl, I've always been into more literature, writing, reading. I was never like a math, economics kind of person. So I thought, well, marketing would be great because it's about taking a product, understanding the value proposition, and then telling the story. It's storytelling towards the audience. So I thought, oh, I should check out marketing. And so that's what I did. But, and I can get into this later on, but career change is very difficult, even with an MBA. So what I was trying to do at the time was I was trying to change industries, change functions, and change geography, and I changed everything. And that proved to be a bit of a moonshot for me at least. And so what ended up happening was that I wanted to stay in the States for work for a couple of years at least post MBA. So I ended up going right back into finance because finance was the industry where I had experience in, and finance was the industry that was willing to sponsor my work visa. So I landed right back into where I used to be. And so that's what I did for a while in New York. But, it didn't take long for me I couldn't fool myself for that long. I knew that I still wanted to explore other opportunities. So I went to see an immigration lawyer in New York and said, look, I want to quit my current job. I want to explore other opportunities. What are the options? And she said, well, you can't quit. I mean, your work visa is tied to your job. And so as I sat there in her office, like wallowing and, feeling sorry for myself, the attorney said, well, she gave me this really puzzled look and said, well, what are you complaining about? Like you have it all. And I remember just sitting there, letting those words sort of sink in. And I'm sure it was only a couple of seconds, but it felt like an eternity where she said, you have it all. And I was like, it just rang so hollow and false to me because it was. I mean, I wasn't happy. But long story short, I said, okay, I'm going to quit. I'm just going to leave the States. I'm just going to go out and explore other opportunities. So that's what I did. And that journey was it took up pretty much throughout my 30s. I took up projects in nonprofit. I did some work in government. I did work for a corporate America, a bunch of startups. So I pretty much, I said, to myself, like, I just have to try everything. I have to find that one thing that I really love. And then I clearly remember it wasn't going well. I couldn't find that passion in life. And therefore, I remember this day I was sitting in a place on the dock near in a fishing diving village called Anilao in the Philippines. And it's a beautiful surroundings. And like, I was sitting there with my dog next to me. And when you're in a beautiful location like that, you're faced with existential questions. Like, and I was just sitting there like, I mean, what am I doing? It's just like, yeah, so that's where I was. And that pretty much continued. And I tried a lot of things and I was just about to give up. I was like, okay, maybe I'm just asking for too much. Maybe a job is just a job and you do something that you're reasonably happy with. You're not supposed to seek passion. You're just supposed to do it. and that was that. And I was sort of leaning in that direction. And I was also relocating geographically. And that was when I thought, oh, I need to do something. I can't just be doing nothing. And so I took up a job as a part-time admissions consultant. And I thought, oh, this is a great thing I could do for time being, because it's marketing basically. It's back to business school, that marketing was what I wanted to do. And this is actually marketing in the sense that your client is the product. You're supposed to look for the value proposition there,
Right.
and you're supposed to engage in the storytelling aspect of it, and the audience is the business school. So I thought, oh, this is great. It's a combination of everything. It's marketing. It's also writing and reading and all those stuff that I've always liked to do since childhood. And that was 6 years ago. I did it as a part-time job for another company, and fast forward to now, I do it. I have my own business and I do it for myself, and it's full time. I can't imagine doing anything else at this point. I love it. I absolutely love it. And it just comes to show I learned that, you should never give up. You should never give up on looking for that one thing that you're meant to do.
Right.
Yeah. And also sorry.
I was just going to say, Masaki, if you don't mind me interrupting, that, you're kind of in a niche business. I mean, it's not like we grow up and we say, oh, I want to be an MBA admissions consultant, right?
Yeah.
It's a niche business. So I want to just applaud you for sticking with it. Actually, there's a quote, you might know it from Steve Jobs. He says, you can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can connect them looking backwards. Because I have this feeling that what you bring is all this diverse experience, plus your own thinking, really thinking about, what do I want?
Absolutely. It is about the Steve Jobs connecting the dots, because in that moment when I was in finance and all these other industries and, traveling around the world and doing whatever, I sometimes I just didn't know what I was doing. Like, why is this happening to me? How did I put myself in this situation? But looking back, it all makes sense now.
Right.
The reason why I was in finance back then is because I have a lot of finance clients right now. Like they get that. I understand their industry. I understand their positions and the predicament that they're in, the challenges that they have. And same goes for the other people in other industries, because I've dipped my toes in their industries as well. And have a somewhat of an understanding of what they do. And that makes it more easy for me to craft their storytelling in the application.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Well, what a rich background. And also I'm guessing that you bring a lot of sensitivity to this journey.
Sensitivity in terms of understanding
the empathy, tuning into. So let's talk a little bit about who should get an MBA.
I'd say there's immediately several categories of people come to mind. There's the first bracket, which is the usual suspects. It's the investment bankers, private equity people, management consultants. So they pretty much, if they're happy with what they're currently doing, and if they plan on making it to the partner level at whichever their firm that they're at, then an MBA is pretty much a must. You sort of need it. So that's clear cut and simple. And then the second category of people I see, and this may be the biggest category, are the career changers like myself. They're in this position right now where they're unhappy with one or two aspects of it. That could be the industry, that could be the function, or that could be the geography, maybe two of those three things. And they want to make a change, and an MBA could open doors to that.
Yeah.
And then the third category people, I would call them the career accelerators. So these people may be perfectly happy in their positions. They know what they want. They're in the industry that they want. They love their function. They love their employer, but they're impatient. They're not complacent. They want to get to where they want to get to quicker. So they want to manage more teams. They want to be involved in strategic decisions, and they sort of know that they're going to get there anyways, eventually, because of their current performance, but they don't want to sit around and wait. They want an MBA to get there quicker. So those three are the main ones. And then there's also the entrepreneurs. So I recently had an entrepreneur client who was already successful in his home country. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's launched multiple products and he's sold multiple businesses. So he's doing it serially. He's a serial entrepreneur, but he got to a point where he had ideas that he thought he could scale internationally. And when you get that kind of idea, then it comes down to, well, how am I going to get investors on board? How am I going to pitch myself to those investors? How am I going to meet business partners and co-founders who can sort of take my idea and help me refine it and make it more executable? And that's when an MBA could help him do that, especially if you're taking your product out of your country and scaling it internationally. You need help in doing that, and MBA could help. So I'd say roughly those four categories.
Oh, I love that. And also how I mean, I'm guessing that over the course of your experience, you've been able to kind of discover these four sort of groups of types of applicants.
Yeah.
Masaki,
Go ahead. No.
What makes for a successful MBA application?
I would say, well, the number one thing, anybody who has remotely read something about applying to business school knows that it is about leadership. That's the number one thing. I do want to qualify leadership by saying that leadership in the MBA application context is not about having certain managing director titles or managing dozens of people, because most people who are applying to full-time programs, they only have 4 to 5 years of experience. So I would say a vast majority don't have people reporting to them. If they do, it's like a couple people. So that's not really what it's about. It's more about leadership potential. So do they see you in that kind of position, sometime down the road? And what they look for more is leadership in terms of impact on projects, impact on people around you, even people senior to you, basically. So for example, if you're the kind of person who can see a project and why a project is stalling, they could be because there's multiple teams involved, dipping their fingers in, and they all have various reasons, pulling in different directions, and it's just not working out. If you're the kind of person who can pull those different teams together and steer them in the right direction in unison, and then carry that ball over the finish line, that's impact, that's leadership. Or if you're the kind of person who is, maybe you're a 4th year employee, and then if you're the kind of person who naturally attracts 1st and 2nd year employees and to seek guidance in whatever technical difficulties they're having or relationship issues that they're having in the workplace, and you can give guidance in a way that actually empowers them. So I want to qualify that by saying, a lot of people tell me, oh, I have a lot of leadership experience, and then I sit there and listen to it. It's more babysitting. It's not, babysitting is different from actually empowering people to bring out their own ability to execute on things independently. So there's a difference. So it's those kind of things that people that the schools look for.
Got it. Yeah. And so who should not be applying to an MBA? Who maybe wants to, but really isn't fit for it?
So I talked to a lot of people who come to me saying, I want to apply to business school because I'm currently unhappy in my position. And trust me, I know, I get it. I speak with authority on this topic because I've been in those situations. But it's just that, okay, well, you're unhappy in your current work. Well, why is that? And where are you headed? Like, do you have a career direction? If you don't have a career direction, I won't say that you shouldn't apply, but you're definitely not ready. So
Right.
you need a refined career goal. You don't need to have nailed down everything because that is part of the reason you go to business school, but the
Mhm,
schools
mhm.
will at least seek to see that you have a career direction that's in congruence with where your passion is or who you
Right.
are as a person. Yeah. And it is about authenticity. And when I say authenticity, it is about matching your actions with your words. So if you say something like, if you're an investment banker in New York and all of a sudden say that I want to become a product manager for whichever tech company in the Bay Area, the schools are going to say, okay, well, show us the action that you took so far to go
Right.
in that direction. Like, what have you done in the past, or what are you doing right now to head in that direction? And if 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 you can't answer that question, then well, your actions are not matching your words,
Right.
and therefore that makes you inauthentic, and your goals are not authentic. It's just
Right.
performative. You're just saying whatever the schools want to hear.
Right, right, right. Oh,
Yeah,
that's really fascinating. Yeah.
yeah.
And so what about for those, um, I mean, an MBA, typically what's the age group for an MBA are you finding in your business?
I mean, the most typical age group for full-time programs is I would say mid to late 20s, even up
Yep.
until early 30s. That's the most common. But and I want to mention, like, there's plenty of people who come to me who are maybe 29, 30, 31, maybe even mid 30s, and come to me saying, like, I'm so old, like, am I too old to apply to business school? And I'm
Right.
like, well, first of all, you're not old.
Yep.
Screw you for saying that to me. And number two, it's not really about the age per se. It's more
Right.
about where you fit in the give and take ecosystem. So
Right.
business school is about you're supposed to contribute to your classmates, but you're supposed to get something out of your classmates too.
Right.
So if you're a 40-something-year-old marketing exec at a pharmaceutical company, okay, maybe you are too old, because if you're sitting in a classroom full of 20-something-year-olds, you have a lot to show them, but what are
Yes.
you going to gain from them? But again, it depends on the circumstance, because if you're, let's say, a 38-year-old artist who's been painting all your life, and then you sell your paintings yourself, you do your own marketing, then you might actually benefit from a classroom full of 20-year-olds, because, okay, you can learn how to, if you want to spread your artwork by opening up a chain of galleries around the world, that's going to involve talking to investors, building a team, and figuring out what the operations are going to be. And these 20 something year olds in the classroom could maybe give you tidbits of their wisdom to do that. And at the same time, because you sell your artwork, maybe you have something to say about marketing.
Hmm.
So there's a give and take. You fit within that
Right.
ecosystem. So even
Right.
if you're above the average age, it could work still.
Right. And I'm sure, Masaki, that you can actually, because of your experience, you can
Mhm.
probably really guide someone through making that choice, because the other option is an EMBA, an executive MBA, right?
Exactly.
Hmm.
Like the example that I gave earlier about the pharmaceutical executive who's been
Hmm.
doing marketing for 20 years. I mean, that he's clearly more suited for an EMBA program, because
Right.
he'll be surrounded by others who are in their 40s and 50s, late 30s, who've been in their game for a long time, stayed within the industry, maybe switched employers, but within the industry, has a lot of experience, moreover, managerial experience. So
Yes.
they're your peers, and therefore there's a lot more give and take.
Yes.
The recent example I have, that's actually my favorite. This is one of the reasons why I love EMBA applicants, is because they've done the hard yards, they've rolled with the
Right.
punches, and therefore they know themselves better. So
Yes.
it's not too hard for them to explain themselves, because they know what's important to them, they know
Right.
what their weaknesses are, and therefore they're able to articulate what they want out of an MBA, and that's what makes them compelling as
Yeah.
applicants.
Oh, I
And
bet. Hmm.
I had one such applicant that I worked with. She was already in her 50s, well into her 50s. She was at the top of her game in the region that she manages, but she felt like she was hitting the ceiling, a glass ceiling, in the sense that, well, she's an immigrant, so she had a college degree from her home country, but she didn't have formal education in the country that she's operating in. So she thought that was what was preventing her from going to the headquarters level where she could be more involved with the corporate strategic decision making. So I helped her with her application, and now she's attending the EMBA program. And what's fascinating about her is that for the past 2 decades, she's single-handedly been raising her son. So she was too busy with her work and everyday work, and then raising her son. And now that the son is in college, she can finally invest her time and finances into her own education. So it's like, it's a perfect example of how you can never be too old to start something.
How amazing. Yeah. And I'm just curious, so based on your experience, what makes for a successful executive MBA application?
Yeah, for starters, the schools will definitely look more at your leadership experience. At this point, you have no excuse whatsoever. It's not about leadership potential. It is leadership experience. They will look to see what real impact you've had, not just on yourself or just the project, but the people around you and how you helped them grow. So that the hurdle is higher in that aspect. But the good thing is that the other hurdles come down a little bit in terms of the mechanics. Like they no longer care too much about your university GPA. I mean, that's, who cares at this point? Yeah. So.
Fair enough. Yeah. And if you don't mind, would you, for the benefit of our viewers, would you walk us through what's the process? So once somebody, hires you to be their MBA admissions coach, what happens next? Is there kind of a typical process here?
I'll speak for myself. What I do is, people come to me thinking we're going to dive right into the essays. No, that's not how it works. In order to understand what your value proposition is, who you are as a person, how we're going to brand you, in order to understand all that, I have to understand you first. So what I do, we go on multiple calls. I make you do some writing to me, not to the schools. We're not talking about the essays here, but I make people write to me, literally, like sometimes even over dozens of pages worth of their life history and work history and what's important to them. And that's how I get a chance to really learn about them, because they know that they're writing to me. They're being honest, they're being authentic. So I get to understand them as a person, as opposed to the essays that they start writing later. And that's how I get to know them, and I talk to them, and we try to figure out what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what they need to work on, what their career goals are, and what is preventing them from getting to wherever they want to get to, and how an MBA fits within that equation. So despite all this pre-work that I do with applicants, so we've done that, and then we move on to writing the essays, and we even discuss what topic or material we're going to use for the essays. They still are conscious of the fact that the schools are going to read the essays, and therefore they're writing things that are totally different from what they told me. And I said, hey, wait a minute here, like you're being performative in the essays again. Like what we want is, we want to present your real self, and they don't recognize it, but the writing that they did for me is a lot stronger than whatever they're writing for the schools, because what they wrote to me is authentic. So I often find myself just taking what they wrote to me and just replacing it with what they wrote in the essays. And the resume is, again, multiple iterations of how to strengthen each bullet point. People are very they like to get into job tasks on their resume, and that's not what the schools or any employer for that matter. I work with some professionals, not for business schools, but for job search. And the resume is supposed to be your greatest hits. It's about the quantifiable accomplishments, the stuff that you can substantiate, that you want to showcase. It's not about listing out job tasks. So that takes several iterations. And the recommenders, I don't touch recommendation letters, but I can sort of help them pick the right recommenders. People tend to think that they're supposed to look for famous people or influential people and get them to write. that's not really the right approach. You're supposed to ask someone who knows you well, can articulate your strengths in a way that is very peppered with examples and details, because
Yeah.
that's how the letter becomes authentic. Like if you ask a famous person that you know who doesn't really know you on the job, then it's going to be, oh, so and so is great. End of story. There's no examples, so it's weak.
Yes.
So I can help them pick out the recommenders, and then the rest, filling out applications form, basically making sure everything is consistent.
Right.
And if they're invited to interview, I work on the interview as well.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
gosh, Masaki, as I'm hearing you speak, it's making me think, I wish I had you as a guide, someone to link arms with when I was applying to business school. I went to
Yeah.
Wharton too, as you know, and
Yeah.
it's not an easy process to try to figure out all by yourself. And so
It's
having a
not.
guide is so important.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's not. It's not an easy process being self-aware and
Right,
self-reflecting. It's not. It's hard
right.
for older generations, even with all the experience. And
Yes.
when
Yeah.
you're in your 20s, it's very hard. And that's how oftentimes people look externally and
Yes.
seeking guidance from friends or current
Right.
students at their dream schools. And you know, sometimes that goes in the wrong direction. What you're doing is what you're trying to do is, instead of looking internally on what's important to you, you're trying to figure out what pleases other people. And
Exactly.
that's actually what makes the application inauthentic
Right.
and not convincing and weak.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to share just one quote,
Yep.
because I just thought of this because of what we're talking about right now. I had one client who I was really impressed with because she got this point. And this was before I got involved with her, really. She said it to me off the bat. And so she wasn't coached or anything. I didn't, manufacture this, steer her into saying this. She just said to me, I never compare myself with others. I compare myself every day to who I was yesterday, a
Mm.
month ago, 2 years ago. I set up my own benchmarks and milestones based on my own values. I don't care about what society thinks. These are my milestones, my benchmarks, and I measure my progress against my goals. And if I'm happy with my progress, great. I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing. If I'm not happy with my progress, I reevaluate, recalibrate, and try to hit those milestones quicker. And I was just so blown away with her insight and the recognizing that importance of being self-aware and being
Yes.
self-possessed in a way, because that's you that it's so rare. I see that very rarely.
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
so that
But
was
I
very
bet,
interesting.
like you're saying, that the self-awareness, I bet that your clients get
Uh-huh.
so much more out of their journey with you than just,
Mhm.
I got my application in. It sounds to me like you are providing this container for them that is really helping them to know more of who they are and to show up that way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is really not just about applying to business schools. Ultimately, it is about trying to
Yes.
reach your personal goals. And
Yes.
so the greatest satisfaction I get from working with these clients is that it's well, of course, getting into schools is great,
Right.
but when I hear back from them years later telling me that they got whatever it is that they wanted,
Yes.
that's the ultimate validation of the importance of self-reflection.
Yes.
And so this application process is just not just for getting into schools. It really is
Right.
about career planning
Yeah.
into the future. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what an incredibly vital service that really, I would imagine, touches lives in a very significant way, in addition to getting into the business school. Um, we do have to, Masaki, wrap up in a few minutes. Is there
Mhm.
anything that we haven't discussed yet and something important that you'd like the audience to know about MBA or EMBA applications?
Um, I would say, yeah, for those of you who are not risk averse, who have a sense of direction or eager to find that sense of direction, it's definitely something that you should consider. if you're solely focused on financial ROI, that, there's some uncertainty there.
Mhm.
But for me personally, and based on my conversations with my clients, it's really the intangible ROI, the confidence factor that comes out of getting through that difficult process. Then completing the program is a whole nother ballgame. It's also
Right.
very, very difficult. So you can look back and say, well, I got in, I completed that incredibly difficult program within that competitive crowd.
Yeah.
Therefore, even though something's not going right now, there must be something that's going for me. There must be something within me that would enable me to problem solve in whatever situation I am. And also say no, walk away from situations and opportunities that don't serve you well. And it's that confidence factor that is truly priceless.
Wonderful. Oh boy, thank you so much for adding that. And if for people who want to contact you, what's the best way to find you?
I have a website. It's just consultmasaki.com, and people can also reach me by email, masaki@consultmasaki.com.
Great. And we'll post both of those, that information here with our information. So I want to thank you so much. Even though I got my MBA years ago, this has been very enlightening for me as well. And, I was just thinking, I mean, I can imagine that people who will want to hear and learn from you are not only MBAs and EMBAs, but, there are people out there whose sons, daughters, nieces, and nephews, colleagues are applying, right? And just being more informed, of course, is just so, so, so helpful. So Masaki, thank you so much for your time. I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
I'm Stephanie Hessler, and thank you so much for being here. And remember, exceptional is inside of you.